people should be expected to get beaten. They should expect to spend in jail, and it may go beyond the summer when they're in jail, and that they should expect possibly somebody to get killed.
We're talking thousands of files, documents, and some very powerful photos. I had the opportunity briefly to go through some of those FBI memos. It's really hard to digest, kind of emotional, but some say it's necessary.
They were stopped by the police, accused of speeding. They were put in jail, and they were not allowed to make a phone call, and they were released at night. They got back in the car, and the Ku Klux Klan nabbed them.
For the latest on the search for the three missing boys,
I asked Hoover 2 weeks ago, after talking to the Attorney General, to fill up Mississippi with FBI men and infiltrate everything he could. What do they think happened? Think they got killed?
This morning they had absolutely no trace. There's no sign of the automobile. They have found nobody who's seen the car or the three people. So as far as they're concerned, they just disappeared from the face of the earth.
Thousands of law enforcement agents for 44 days were looking for my brother's body and James and Mickey. They dredged out of the swamps 9 black bodies who no one had even heard of. There's multiple levels of tragedy in this story. One of them that is most poignant for me, besides losing my brother, was that it took 2 white kids to legitimize the tragedy of being murdered if you wanted to vote. Jerry Mitchell is a unique, wonderful hero. He said, "This is unfair," just like what Andy said. He found evidence and wrote about it so much that he just embarrassed the powers that be to get on it. She and my father decided the issue is to let America know that this is not about hatred. This is not about revenge. My mother was against capital punishment. She was more interested in letting people know this was her son who was murdered. He didn't do anything bad. He was living the American dream.
In order for us to understand what happened, we have to have truth.
The sweltering Mississippi heat hung heavy in the air on June 21st, 1964, as a white and blue Ford station wagon rolled down the dusty back road. Inside, 3 young men, their youthful idealism a stark contrast to the simmering racial tensions of the time, were making their way towards Philadelphia, Mississippi. Michael Schwerner, the earnest and determined leader, sat behind the wheel. Beside him was James Chaney, the only black member of the trio, his courage a testament to his unwavering commitment to equality. In the back seat sat Andrew Goodman, his quiet intellect masking a burning desire for justice. They were civil rights workers, their mission to register black voters in the heart of the segregated South. As the station wagon approached the town of Philadelphia, a patrol car materialized in their rearview mirror, its flashing lights piercing the midday sun. Deputy Cecil Ray Price, a man with close ties to the Ku Klux Klan, had signaled them to pull over, the charge speeding. It seemed like a routine traffic stop, a minor inconvenience. But beneath the surface of normalcy, a sinister plan was already in motion. The summer of 1964 was different in Mississippi. This was Freedom Summer, a period of unprecedented civil rights activism, where hundreds of volunteers, mostly young and idealistic, descended upon the state to challenge the deeply entrenched system of segregation. The volunteers, among them Schwerner, Chaney and Goodman, were driven by a vision of equality, a belief that all Americans, regardless of the color of their skin, deserved the right to vote. Their mission was to register black voters, to empower a disenfranchised community and give them a voice in the political process. But their efforts were met with fierce resistance from the white establishment, who saw their way of life under threat. The Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist terrorist organization with a long and bloody history in the South, was particularly threatened by the civil rights movement. They saw the influx of activists as an invasion, their message of equality as an assault on their deeply held beliefs. On June 16th, just 5 days before the fateful traffic stop, the Mount Zion Methodist Church, a hub for the civil rights movement, was burned to the ground. In the shadows of the burning church, a sinister plot was hatched. The Klan, determined to silence the voices of dissent, met in secret, their faces hidden beneath white hoods, their voices low and menacing. The target? The three civil rights workers who had become symbols of the movement they so despised. Among the conspirators was Lawrence A. Rainey, the Neshoba County Sheriff, a man sworn to uphold the law but bound by the twisted ideology of the Klan. His deputy, Cecil Ray Price, the man who would later make the fateful traffic stop, was also present, his loyalty to the Klan eclipsing his oath to serve and protect. The plan was simple, brutal, and efficient. Intercept the civil rights workers, spirit them away to a remote location, and make them disappear. It was a conspiracy born of hate, fueled by fear, and executed with chilling precision. They believed they were above the law, untouchable in their reign of terror. They were wrong. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Mississippi countryside, the three civil rights workers sat in their cell, their initial anxiety giving way to a growing sense of dread. They had been held for several hours without charge, denied access to a phone. Outside, the Klan lay in wait, their patience wearing thin. Finally, as darkness enveloped the town, Sheriff Rainey, his face a mask of feigned indifference, ordered their release. It was a cruel charade, designed to lull the young men into a false sense of security. As they stepped out of the jailhouse and into the warm night air, they had no way of knowing that the real ordeal was about to begin. Deputy Price, his eyes cold and calculating, followed them out of the jailhouse. He offered them a lift, a seemingly innocuous gesture that sealed their fate. For 46 agonizing days, the fate of the three civil rights workers remained a mystery. Their disappearance sparked national outrage and plunged the country deeper into the turmoil of the civil rights struggle. President Lyndon B. Johnson, outraged by the audacity of the crime, ordered a massive FBI investigation, dispatching hundreds of agents to Mississippi. The search for the missing men dominated headlines, their faces staring out from newspapers across the country. But in Mississippi, a wall of silence greeted the FBI. The Klan, bound by oaths of secrecy and fear, refused to cooperate. It seemed as if the earth had swallowed the three young men whole. Then on August 4th, 1964, came the breakthrough. Acting on a tip, FBI agents descended upon a remote farm near Philadelphia. There, buried beneath tons of earth in a hastily constructed dam, they found the bodies of the missing men. The discovery of the bodies ignited a firestorm of controversy and outrage across the nation. The brutal killings became a symbol of the deep-seated racism and violence that plagued the South. The nation demanded justice, but in Mississippi the wheels of justice turned slowly, grinding against the weight of history and prejudice. The FBI, under immense pressure to bring the perpetrators to justice, built a meticulous case against the Klan members involved in the murders. However, they faced an uphill battle. Witnesses were intimidated into silence, evidence disappeared, and a culture of fear permeated the community. The state of Mississippi, with its long history of racial injustice, seemed reluctant to prosecute the killers. The first trial, held in 1967, focused on charges of violating the civil rights of the three victims. 7 of the 18 men indicted were found guilty, but none served more than 6 years in prison. For decades, the spectre of Edgar Ray Killan, the preacher who used his pulpit to preach hate, loomed large over Philadelphia, Mississippi. He remained a free man, a living embodiment of the state's failure to deliver justice for the slain civil rights workers. Then, in 2005, 41 years after the murders that shocked the nation, the state of Mississippi finally decided to reopen the case against Killan. The trial, held in the same courthouse where Killan had evaded justice decades earlier, captivated the nation, reopening old wounds and forcing a reckoning with the ghosts of the past. The prosecution, armed with new evidence and emboldened by the passage of time, presented a compelling case detailing Killan's role in orchestrating the murders. Witnesses, some of whom had remained silent for fear of their lives, came forward to testify, their voices cracking with emotion as they recounted the events of that fateful night. Killan, now frail and confined to a wheelchair, remained defiant, his eyes cold and calculating. He maintained his innocence, claiming he was a victim of circumstance, a scapegoat in a grand conspiracy. On June 21, 2005, 41 years to the day after the murders of Chaney, Goodman and Schwerner, the jury in the Edgar Ray Killan trial returned with a verdict. Guilty on 3 counts of manslaughter. The courtroom, packed with family members of the victims, journalists and curious onlookers, erupted in a mixture of cheers and sobs. Killan, his face betraying no emotion, was sentenced to 60 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed by law. It was a bittersweet victory, a long-delayed measure of justice tempered by the knowledge that true justice would never be served. The three young men, their lives cut tragically short, could never be brought back. The Killan trial, while a significant moment in the pursuit of justice for the slain civil rights workers, also exposed the limitations of the legal system. It highlighted the challenges of achieving true reconciliation in the face of deeply ingrained prejudice and the enduring legacy of racial violence. The murders of Chaney, Goodman and Schwerner, seared into the national consciousness as a symbol of racial hatred, cast a long shadow over America. They serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of prejudice and the fragility of justice in the face of intolerance. The case, with its echoes of slavery, Jim Crow, and the violent suppression of black voices, exposed the deep-seated racism that permeated American society. It forced the nation to confront the uncomfortable truth that the promise of equality for all remained unfulfilled. The legacy of the Mississippi burning case is complex and multifaceted. It is a reminder that the fight for civil rights is an ongoing struggle, a battle that must be fought and won in courtrooms, in legislatures, and in the hearts and minds of individuals. The murders of Chaney, Goodman and Schwerner, though a horrific act of violence, ultimately served as a turning point in the civil rights movement. The national outrage sparked by their deaths galvanized public opinion and put pressure on the federal government to take a more active role in protecting civil rights workers and dismantling segregation in the South. The passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, just weeks after their disappearance, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were in part a direct response to the sacrifices made by these young men. Their deaths, while a devastating loss, helped to pave the way for a more just and equitable society. The story of the Mississippi burning case continues to resonate today, serving as a reminder of the importance of combating racism and intolerance in all its forms. It is a story that needs to be told and retold, ensuring that the sacrifices made by those who fought for equality are never forgotten. Their legacy lives on in the countless acts of courage and compassion that continue to chip away at the walls of prejudice.
This case went national because these guys were from New York, and you had this lone black guy from Mississippi. If it had just been James Chaney, we probably would never have found out about the case at all.
Those, I think, will be the most powerful part of the collection. You'll see the burned bodies, the burned cars, aerial shots of the dam, and autopsy photos.